Hello and welcome to the latest Science of Sport podcast. I'm your host Matt Solomon, and today I'm delighted to be joined by Jamie Mackay. So Jamie is a strength and conditioning coach at Malmö FF, a football team in Sweden, where he's responsible for the return to play of players to make sure that they're coming back in optimal physical condition. So who better today to discuss return to play on the field than Jamie? So without further ado, it's time to welcome him onto the show. So Jamie, welcome to the Science of Sport podcast. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you, Matt. It's good to be here.
Thank you very much for joining us. So can you give us a quick introduction as to who you are and what you've been up to until now?
So I'm a strength and conditioning coach working at Malmo FF in Sweden. Been here for almost 6.5, 7 years now. Started off as an intern, and then the role kind of gradually grew into a full-time position. And now my kind of current responsibilities are rehabbing the players back into kind of getting them back into full team training. So it's kind of that bridge between the physios having them and then the coaches getting them back.
So obviously that's what we're going to discuss today, right? So that makes you an absolutely perfect person to go through that. So like when we've got an injured player, obviously, I don't know, ACL, ankle injury, whatever it might be, you got someone injured. Like, what do we mean by return to play? Because obviously there's loads of different terminology. It can be like return to fitness, return to the field, return to the gym. What do we mean by return to play?
So return to play is kind of the period after they've been injured that they can return to playing their sport. And when I say playing their sport, I mean in some capacity. So it's depending on the injury, it's going to depend on the duration of that phase. But that's kind of the period where we're getting them back outside, we're getting them a ball at their feet, getting them kind of a little bit more excited about the rehab, because it is a tough journey for them a lot of the times, and normally those first few sessions back on the pitch for them is like they see the light at the end of the tunnel. They know they're almost there. They can see the rest of the team training, so it's normally quite a nice period for them being able to get back outside, boots on, and start playing football, which is what they love to do.
And what's the goal of that? So obviously you want to bring them back to play football, right? But like, what's the goal of this training phase?
Exactly. So obviously the main goal is to get them back into team training and then get them available for selection for the coaches. But within that, we've kind of got the goal of getting them moving well, getting them comfortable doing the actions that they need to do, whether that's max speed, change of directions, aggressive finishing, those kind of things, getting them comfortable and confident in their own head that they can do them. And then the other side is, obviously this depends on the duration of the injury, how long they've been out, is the conditioning side. So can we get them fit enough to be able to participate in small-sided games, or especially for getting them back for match fitness is the next stage. But we kind of work with those two main goals, really.
And why is that then important? Why is it important that we do that instead of just like rushing them back in and getting them into those games immediately and then put them on the pitch?
Yeah, I mean, the big thing is risk of re-injury. So we know that once an athlete has had an injury, then the risk of it happening again is much higher, or potentially them getting injured elsewhere if we're seeing some kind of compensation patterns or anything like that. So that phase is kind of an opportunity for us to get them moving well, get them confident, and get them fit and get them ready to perform at the level they need to perform at, for whether it's training, small-sided games. We know how intense they are as a training stimulus anyway. And then of course the coach doesn't want us sending players back in who they're ready to play but they're not fit enough. So it's kind of that balance between what they can do and then how much of it they can do as well.
So obviously there's stages to this, right? It's not just that we go, right, you've got an ACL injury, go out for a run and we'll throw you back in and we'll see what happens. So like before they get onto that pitch stage, obviously the pitch stage is the stuff that we're going to go into, but before we get onto that, what's the process like? Because it can't just be injury and then run about on the pitch.
No, so initially, of course, they're with the physios for however long they need to be, and that's going to be depending on what injury it is. And then there's this kind of grey area in between where they're getting to the end stage of the physio work, and then we can start to add in some extra stuff, whether it's strength or power work, or even some conditioning, treadmill or off feet if we need to be. And that phase is kind of almost, can we maintain some fitness? Can we get some strength gains or power gains elsewhere? So it's kind of almost a preparatory phase to get them ready to handle the demands of the RTP process, being back out on the pitch.
And like, what kind of systems are in place to make sure that they recover fully then, and then make sure that they're getting that preparatory phase? Like, how do you then make that work as a team? Is there like a framework that you have with the physios, or is it kind of like meetings and discussions per person? How does that look?
For us, it's normally daily meetings with the physios and adjusting things on the fly, because we know in football things change quite quickly, and us having that close, open dialect really allows us to go in and change things where we need to. But yeah, in terms of ensuring they're recovering, it's all kind of about the planning and how we organize their training with the stuff they're doing with the physios, with the stuff we want them to do, and it's managing their weekly load in that sense.
And we're going to touch on some load management stuff in just a second. But like when they are back onto the field, so you've gone through that process with the physios, and you've gone through the gym work, and you've gone, you know what, this player, they're ready to go. Like, we can get them on the pitch now. How do you bring them from zero, which let's assume I know you've just done a prep phase, but like, let's assume they're zero on the pitch. How do you bring them from zero through to someone who's ready to play in competitive games again?
Yeah, so this is obviously going to depend on the injury and how long they've been out for. So for longer term injuries, we're obviously going to have a longer return to play process. But it's mainly about progressing them through, whether it's technical drills, movement drills, change directions, progressing from small angles to bigger angles, and essentially the same as we progress exercises in the gym, we're going to do the same outside with technical drills, movement drills, and then adding the conditioning in as well, and progressing through that. And then obviously the shorter term injuries, it's a little bit different really, because they haven't been out for so long, so their fitness probably hasn't dropped off too much. So that's more of going to be more of a testing phase, as in pushing them so we know that they're confident doing the things that they're going to have to do in training, whether it's a max sprint or a super aggressive change of directions or things like that.
And is there kind of some kind of like framework you use to support that? How do you what's a long-term injury, what's a short-term injury? How do you work those things out to make sure that you're not just rushing someone through the process?
Yeah, I mean, for the longer term injuries, we follow the control to chaos continuum, which is Matt Tabner did a lot of has done a lot of papers on that. So we kind of took that and adapted some things to fit our structure and schedule and how we like to work. But that's what we use for the longer term ones. And then if it's a short term injury, if it's a week they've been out, then maybe they only need one or two sessions before we can modify them back into the team stuff.
Absolutely excellent. And when you do that, obviously they've come back onto the field, and they've done some gym work. Come back, you're going to put them through all of those different drills, those different kind of tests. How do you monitor how that process is going? Because it's very difficult to go, right, this is gym training, and that was like a heavy 3 weeks of gym, and then you put them into the field and it's a completely different stimulus, obviously. How do you manage that transition, and how do you look at training load to make sure that players aren't doing too much too soon?
So we use GPS devices, obviously, to track their on-pitch load. And we use the relative data based off what they do in a game. And we'll have specific targets based on how long we expect the return to play process to be, that we can then kind of progress them through. And obviously within that, then you've got the overall load throughout the week, but then we can get a little bit more specific in terms of accels, decels, or high speed running, and try and manipulate the session to overload specific variables if we want, or underload stuff if we need to, and kind of adapt it that way. And we use the Catapult live system, so we can change stuff on the fly if we need to. If accelerations are too high, maybe we cut the drill short and just do some extra running to get some extra distance in, or whatever it is the goals of the session on that day.
And how does that work in real life? Because obviously you can't just bury your head on a laptop, right? Like you have to be with the player as well. So have you got someone who's helping out with that, or are you like just on an iPad quickly have a look at it and come back, or how does that work?
We do. So if I'm with working with a player, we'll have one of the guys will be managing the iPad. So we've Clancy, who's been working with us, who's been the intern this year. He's been mainly responsible for doing that. And in between drills, I'll just run over to him, quick check where we at for the numbers. Are we where we need to be? Are we too high? And then I can jump back in and adjust it on the fly there. But we've also created almost now a drill database for the RTP phase. So I can almost predict where we're going to be at based on the drills that I've selected, and then we obviously manipulate the durations around that, and kind of can predict where we're going to end up or where we need to be.
Can you give some examples of that? Because it sounds really interesting, right? Like you've got building blocks to build up exactly where you want to be in whichever phase you might be. So can you give us some examples of what a drill might be and some data you might see from that?
Yeah, so we'll split up the sessions into intensive, extensive, or mixed. So an intensive session is going to be very heavy on accels, decels, probably a lower total distance. Extensive might be a little bit more volume, and then a mixed session is going to be kind of a combination of both, really. But for example, on an extensive day, maybe we're looking at some dribble tracks where we're kind of working 3 minutes on, 90 seconds off, trying to get some aerobic stimulus in. And I can kind of gauge that 3 minutes work is going to be around 500 meters. So based on however much stuff we've done before, whether it's the more technical stuff, then we'll use that as the conditioning stimulus. And I can then say, okay, if they're already at 4K and we want 6K, we'll do 4 reps, because I know it's going to be around 500 meters. The difficulty comes with the intensive stuff when it's more accel decel focused, and we're working those shorter durations, and you have two different players who work at very different intensities. So one may end up getting 50, 60 accels, decels from that block of work, and then the other one might be at 20 accels, decels. So then it kind of comes down to understanding the player themselves, and are they someone that pushes themselves a bit more, or do they tend to take it a little bit more easy? So then if it is, then we can top them up with whether it's multi-directional tempos, and I'm open with them, and I'll explain, like, we haven't got the accels, decels we needed, so we're doing some extra. And most of the time,
how do they respond to that?
then they'll put the effort in. Like, yeah, brilliant, I've got to do extra. But yeah,
do they know that on the front end as well? So if you're like, right, this is the plan for today, and they know, you know what, if I half-ass that drill, then I'm going to be getting extra 15 minutes or whatever at the end.
Yeah, this is something that I've changed over the years I've been working. Now I'm super open with them, and I'll be like, look, we're aiming for 5K today. Once we hit that, we're done. So they know that, okay, they're going to push themselves a little bit harder, because I'm going to cut the session at 5K once we've hit our targets for that day. And that helps with buy-in as well. Then you get a bit more effort throughout the session, which is obviously what we want.
I can imagine it's really good as a player that you can sit there before the session and you're like, I mean, not all players want to do it, and not all players, they might not be interested, might not understand everything that's going on, but that you can sit there and be like, look, this is what we want today. This is the reason that we're doing it. And when you do enough, I'm not going to kill you. I'm not going to do 3 hours of work with you. You don't have to absolutely die on the pitch today. But like, if you work hard, this is what we're going to do. I imagine that for them is really good as well, right? It helps them understand the process. It helps them understand why they're doing things, what the goal is for the day.
Exactly. And it does help when it's a longer term rehab, because they know they're going to be with me for 4-6 weeks longer, probably with the indoor stuff as well. So
Yeah.
I can kind of build that relationship with them and yeah, almost encourage them to be part of the planning process, and it also helps with them with the psychological side of things, that they can kind of feel involved with the program in a way. So it's that's helped massively.
Absolutely excellent. And to like bring all of this together, I'm interested to hear how you take someone from like first day on the pitch all the way through till getting them back into practice onto the pitch, ready to perform. So can you walk us through what that process might look like? It can be an injury, whatever injury you want, but like just to go through those different stages and some different examples of what a session or a drill might look like when you're trying to achieve those goals.
Yeah. So yeah, I've had the blessing, or whether it's a blessing or a curse, but we've had a few ACLs in the last few years. So I think I've done 6 or so in the last 2 years. Not all our players. Some of the players have come back from loan with injured. So it's yeah. Anyway, ACL, we'll go with that because that's quite a common one in football, of course, and it's a long-term injury. But like I said earlier, we use the control to chaos continuum. So we take that into 8 stages. So you've got the first stage is going to be high control. So this is first day back on the pitch. It's more about keeping everything low. It's the first session with the boots on, so it's just about getting them moving again, getting them some touches on the ball, building their confidence around being back outside. And then from there we'll move into moderate control, which is going to be introducing some change directions, some high speed running, building volume a little bit through the sessions, trying to maybe keep the intensity still quite low. But we're almost reducing the control a little bit there, and that's where maybe we add in some more technical drills, whether it's more passing or some low intensity finishing and those kind of things. Phase 3 is going to be control to chaos. So this is where we're starting to get a little bit more intense. We're going to progress the volumes of what we're doing, whether it's accels, decels, or high speed running, or total distance. And potentially we're looking at overloading some specific demands here based on what they need. The moderate chaos phase, this is where we start to get a little bit more position specific and kind of following a normal weekly schedule that the team would be on. So whether that's intensive days and extensive days or mixed days, and trying to match what the team are kind of getting from their training. And then the 5th phase will be high chaos. So that is overload sessions, trying to push them for to get the max values that they'll be getting from a week with training. So for us, that's maybe 3 times a game for distance, high speed running, accels, decels. So that's kind of our big overload week. And it's almost preparing them for the worst case scenario that they might face when they go back into team training or into matches. Then it starts to get a little bit more fun for them, because the next phase is they're in training and we'll modify them in. So the first phase will be non-contact. So they're in warm-ups, passing drills, rondos. Maybe they're a joker in the possession or a wall player in the possession, and then they can be in the tactical stuff as well. And that's quite nice because it almost acts as a deload for us in terms of volume, because we know their training load's not going to be as much. But we found the cognitive side of things is way overloaded, because going from working one-to-one with me to going working with 20 other players around you is a massive difference. So after those sessions, despite them being very low volume, they're always saying, "Oh, I'm so tired after being out in them," because it's almost a whole different stimulus of playing with a team versus just one-to-one training with me. And then they'll move into full contact stuff. So they're maybe in is a player in a possession or progressing that side of things, and then we can progress the volume of how much they do there, and we'll top up stuff where necessary. And then the last phase will be full training, where they're in the small-sided games and as they would be if they were a normal training player. And we'll try and keep them there for maybe 2 or 3 weeks before we say, okay, they're available for selection for the squad. But yeah, I mean, throughout all phases, we'll try and use those extensive, intensive, and mixed sessions just to stimulate different or overload different areas of kind of what we're looking for based off the injury and based off position and where we kind of need them to be at, really. So it's kind of a big process of managing training load and managing the drills they're doing and ensuring that they're comfortable progressing from each phase to each phase. And that's normally not the hard part, because they're always pushing to do more, and I'm almost holding the reins a little bit sometimes, is trying to tell them that it's all part of the process. We're working towards that, but we have to start here, and we'll get there eventually.
I can imagine that's really difficult when you've got someone in an ACL with 9 months, whatever, 12 months, and they're chomping at the bit to go, and they're feeling good, and you're like, you know what, you're at 8 months. We need to slow cook it a little bit longer.
Exactly, and of course, as soon as they get out on the pitch, they're pinging balls about everywhere, and I'm there screaming like, no, yeah, we're not there yet.
Yeah, mate, I think that's a universal problem. There's probably a lot of people listening to this now who are going, "Yeah, I've been there." Having to just bring them back in again and be like, "No, you need to just relax a little bit. You'll get there, but not yet."
Yeah, exactly. But it's good. I mean, I love that the whole RTP phase and getting them back to doing what they love, because it's great to see when you've had someone for that long, and then you see them back starting a game or playing on the pitch again, and it's such a rewarding experience for me, I find. So
I can imagine,
really
mate.
do enjoy it.
Excellent stuff. So, Jamie, massive thanks for your time and effort on today's podcast. Where can people find a little bit more about you and what you're up to?
So for me, I'm probably most active on Instagram, and that's at Jamie Mackay _SC. So of course, if anyone wants to reach out and talk about the RTP process and how I do things, then more than welcome to have a chat on there.
Brilliant. So Jamie, massive thanks. It's been a pleasure, and I look forward to speaking again soon.
Thank you very much, Matt.
Cheers, buddy. Bye. And that's it. Once again, a massive thanks to Jamie for all of his hard work on today's podcast. I really appreciate it. I'm sure you do at home too. Before you leave, I want to point you in the direction of the Science Sport Coach Academy. Now, the Coach Academy is an overgrowing library of sports science courses which are broken down into bite-sized chunks. So if you've enjoyed today's podcast and you want to get some more great sports science information, all you have to do is hit the link in the show notes, and you can get into the Coach Academy completely for free for the next 7 days. So hit that link in just a few seconds' time. And of course, if you have enjoyed today's podcast, it'd be fantastic if you could recommend us to a coach, a colleague, an athlete, or a friend. That means that we can keep bringing the best possible guests and the best possible content. And that's it. Once again, a massive thanks from me. I'm Matt Solomon for Science of Sport, and I'll speak to you next week.